Hello, good morning. It is Thursday, April 16th. We have gotten word that online learning, as we thought was the new norm this week, is changing again due to some security issues and capability issues with Blackboard. So, more information is forthcoming on that. I just wanted to touch base with everybody that didn't get a chance to have class on Tuesday, in particular, eighth period, to go over what we did in class, so you can stay on track and so that you can still be up to speed on preparing for the AP exam that's coming up in basically 1 month. So what we did in class on Tuesday, we did some review of the New Deal. I'll touch base on that in a moment. We did some World War II group DBQ document analysis that parlayed into a DBQ, the modified for 2020 DBQ format, an outline that is being completed as homework. So the expectation for eighth period will be to do the document analysis on your own. I'll explain a couple things here in a few moments, and then, just like the other classes, complete the DBQ outline. Um, just a little bit of exam information. You should already have this. I've sent this to you. You should have received several emails at this point from College Board, but the exam will be May 15th at 2 p.m. It will be comprised of one DBQ question in which you'll have 45 minutes to complete. We'll get into the new rubric here in just a bit. But the warm-up question that students worked on Tuesday, how did the second New Deal differ from the first? Just a few points here to kind of go over this question. In the second New Deal, FDR moved farther to the left. If you remember the first New Deal, most of the leadership in Congress of various committees and subcommittees, those leaders were Southern Democrats, which were who were opposed to, obviously, anything that would benefit African Americans. They were segregationists. So that's why, one of the primary reasons for why the first New Deal programs, for the most part, those benefits were not extended to African Americans. That was a kind of a compromise that Roosevelt made with congressional Democrats to get the legislation passed in the first place. But in the second New Deal, there's a change in leadership. FDR obviously has broad support from the people. He gets elected, 2, 3, 4 times. He gets reelected. So he makes that move farther to the left. The obvious response from the government's perspective is that more programs benefiting more people is going to require more revenue. So the government increases taxes on corporate profits and the wealthy. The second New Deal created a safety net, a social safety net program for vulnerable Americans, aided laborers in their quest to organize, so the creation of labor unions and collective bargaining laws, and then guaranteed economic security and welfare to the elderly, disabled, and underemployed. The Wagner Act and the Social Security Act are the two notable pieces of government expansion under the second New Deal. The Social Security Act providing financial support for the elderly and disabled. The Wagner Act, in addition to labor organization, but collective bargaining for some workplace rights, in providing legal standing for labor unions. All right. So that's major differences between the two New Deals. Those of you that did the SAQ on Google Classroom last week for the extra grade, comparing the New Deal to Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs in the 1960s. I'm still working on grading those. I'm going to get those back to you today. Good information to know. Obviously, the period 8 stuff, which would be the Great Society, will not be on the exam, will not be tested on the exam. However, that's information that you can use as contextualization. So it's still good to know, and we're going to do our best effort to, as we go, sprinkle in some of the content we haven't gotten to yet that is not on the exam. All right, so that is that. I want to move now to Google Classroom. I'm showing the 8th period class because that's who has missed out on class this week. Obviously, this looks a little bit different than 1st and 5th period, so just bear with me here, folks. I'm going to put this video here once I'm done making it. But some things that you see here. First, you see the 2020 modified DBQ rubric, the World War II DBQ group document analysis. Now, 8th period, you are not going to be doing the group document analysis because we're unable to do that today. But you still need to access this PowerPoint presentation in order to get the slides that have the documents for the DBQ. We have the HIPPY analysis chart, which you've have a paper copy of, whether you have it or not. This is something you're probably going to want to print out. This is one of those tools that would be useful to use on the AP exam to kind of help you with the document analysis. All right, so that is there as a resource. And then the World War II DBQ outline, which is your homework assignment. I'll explain that in a few moments. First thing I want to do is point out the details on the new rubric. So all of the parts are the same. What they've done is they've added some points. So this is worth 10 points now instead of 7. The thesis contextualization points are the same. What they've done is added evidence and analysis points. So this DBQ will have 5 documents, and you see here there's some extra points in green. So you get 1 point for using at least 2 of the documents to address the topic of the prompt. You get an additional point for supporting your thesis with 2 documents. And then you get an additional point, that's right here, you can see my cursor circling, for using 4 documents to support the topic and to address your thesis. All right. As far as outside evidence or evidence beyond the documents, there's the usual 1 point for that, but then there's an additional point for using a second piece of historical evidence that's relevant to the argument that you are making and relevant to the prompt. All right, so these are points that you're all well prepared at this point. You can easily get these points. I'm pretty confident in that. Now, analysis and reasoning. This is the hippie part. So this is the analysis part. You get 1 point for hipping 1 document. You get a second point for hipping a second document. So here's the deal. To make the most of these points, to be able to pass this exam, you need to use and explain the contents of 4 documents. And then you need to provide HIP analysis for at least 2 documents. Again, I would recommend going above and beyond here and hipping probably maybe 3 or 4 if you can, just in case your analysis isn't quite on par with what College Board is looking for when the reading comes around. All right, and then the last point is the complexity point, which we're not going to concern ourselves with too much here. This is they left it on here. Less than 1% of the country gets this point. I assume that's going to be even less this year, as there's more of a time crunch on the exam since you only have 45 minutes instead of 1 hour. All right, if anybody has any specific questions about the rubric, you can read the specific rules here and criteria. You can also shoot me an email with any questions you may have. All right, the next thing to cover is the World War II documents. So you're going to want to set aside some time for yourself to do the document analysis. These are the DBQ instructions, and the prompt: evaluate the extent of similarity in experiences of African Americans and Japanese Americans during World War II, 1941 to 1945. So that's the prompt we're working on for this DBQ outline. Do not worry about these directions for the group document analysis. You just want to go to the documents and read the documents, do your HIP analysis. If you'd like, you can make a copy of this slide so you can comment on the actual documents, or you can just work on paper or however you see fit. My suggestion to you would be to do a combination of working on paper and the documents themselves online. That's probably going to be what most people end up doing when they're actually taking the exam. So that's a good strategy to practice. All right. And the DBQ outline. So, a few things to point out about this outline. So this is the homework assignment that is due next week. You're not going to use all of the spaces on this. Remember, you need to use at least 4 of the spaces for documents and at least 2 of the spaces for the HIP points. Contextualization, you'll add that to the chart here. Thesis with the thesis formula. We're going to try to follow a streamlined way of writing an essay here. So X is your counterclaim, A and B are your argument. All right. So for the counterclaim paragraph, or the first supporting paragraph, write a sentence or 2 introduction to the topic of the paragraph. Outside information would go here, and then if you're going to use 1 or 2 documents, again, I'd recommend 2 for the sake of practice. So let's say you're going to use document 2 here, you would say doc 2, and then you would type your information about the document. What you want to include here is the content of the document. We need to be able to do both things. We need to say what the document says, either by paraphrasing, avoid quotes, or by using examples from it. Again, try to avoid quotes, especially in this shortened time period for this DBQ. You don't have a whole lot of time. Writing out quotes takes time, right? And it doesn't show your analysis. So the best is you can paraphrase the document in this section and then provide your HIP analysis just below. And the same with a second document for this paragraph. Now for the second supporting paragraph, or what would be the third paragraph of your essay, this is your argument. This is the A and B points of the thesis. Again, introduce the argument that you're making, and then outside information, and then describe the documents, and then the HIP analysis. Now, the documents are lettered in this outline, A, B, C, D, E. These do not correspond to documents 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It's simply to note that you need to have a document here. So please, as you're doing this outline, if for these correspond essentially to your thesis, you could say that you could just type doc 3, for example, as you see on the screen, and then type your information from the document. It has nothing to do with doc C. It's just for the sake of organizing the docs. The letters are for the sake of organizing the outline. All right, that is that. One other thing I wanted to point out, under end of course review, there are lecture videos. Period 1, 2, and the first part of period 3. The DBQ will not be on periods 1 or 2, but it's good to review. There's just one video for each of these time periods. This is information, again, that can be used as contextualization. The the question for the DBQ will come from periods 3 through 7. So periods 1 and 2 are simply for contextualization. As College Board releases more of these videos, I will continue to post them here and keep you updated on that. So that's it for today. So go ahead and start working on the DBQ analysis, the document analysis, and knock out the outline by the middle of next week so I can get that turned around to you, and we can move on with review, going back to period 1. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email me at any time. I hope everybody's doing well, and hope to touch base with you soon. Take care.